Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
Did you
States.
see that
You're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your independent political analyst, no spin, no tribalism, just facts, context, and thoughtful commentary. Today, we're breaking down a fiery Senate exchange between Senator Richard Blumenthal and Attorney General Pam Bondi. This hearing got heated fast, touching on allegations of political weaponization, the independence of the Department of Justice, and even personal attacks that stunned the room. Let's unpack what happened, why it matters, and what both sides got right and wrong.
So you're Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history. Tragically and chillingly, you may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague, Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay now. 5 days before you indicted, or grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
Did you
States.
see that
You're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you are unwilling
any
to tell
pending
this committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I may
regarding James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me
continue,
show you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there
James
were a lot of
Comey
people there that
discussed-
night. That's a great
Was James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the
Well-
entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down, yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm going to take
conversations
that
I've
as
had
a
or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General,
The entire
whether
cabinet was
you
at that
took
dinner, too,
instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Oh, whoa.
I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I propose legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions, and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish
and
answering the question, I'm not going to
Attorney
yell
General.
over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As you should know with a law degree,
did you not,
that all mergers. If I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
if I could
finish,
no,
interrupt
I'm answering
you
the question.
Because my time is limited.
No, well then don't ask me a question. So,
let me just ask you,
as I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly.
And moreover, two of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving two home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of America. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
and let me ask you
wait,
about
you just listed, you just gave a
Well,
list
let me just finish.
of many mergers.
I have a question
Can you
for
talk
you.
to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
involving American Express GBT, I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversation did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You
you.
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety.
You
I'm asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career prosecutor.
with Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General, and anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Senator Lee has asked for the chair.
Just wanted to note for the record, the Paramount merger that he referenced was not within the Department of Justice's ambit. That was at the FCC, not the Department of Justice. Attorney General Bondi would have had nothing to do with that. Thanks.
And that was why I asked Senator Lee.
Senator Blumenthal opened a hearing by framing it around what he called the weaponization of justice. In plain terms, he argued that the Justice Department under President Trump was being used to punish political enemies. He cited examples former FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James, Congressman Adam Schiff, and others, all of whom Trump had publicly criticized. Blumenthal's main evidence was a social media post from Trump instructing Bondi to indict Comey, which came just 5 days before Comey was, in fact, indicted. Now, whether that's coincidence or coordination, that's the core tension here. And Blumenthal was trying to draw a straight line between Trump's public statements and Bondi's prosecutorial decisions. From an analytical standpoint, this isn't a new argument both parties have, at different times, accuse the other of politicizing justice. What makes this moment unique is how directly Blumenthal tried to connect the dots. Attorney General Bondi, for a part, stayed firmly behind the legal wall. She refused to discuss any private conversations with the president or details of ongoing investigations. That's not unusual. Attorneys general typically avoid confirming or denying private discussions to protect executive privilege and due process. However, her refusal, especially when confronted with a photo of her sitting near Trump at a dinner the night before Comey's indictment, made it look evasive to some viewers. Optically, it wasn't a great moment, but legally, it was the right move. No attorney general should publicly discuss sensitive conversations or active cases under oath. Then the conversation shifted. Blumenthal proposed new legislation to prevent political interference in DOJ charging decisions and to create a legal remedy for politically motivated prosecutions. It's a reform idea that could have bipartisan appeal, codifying DOJ ethics rules, increasing transparency, and limiting presidential influence. But before that idea could gain traction, Bondi fired back hard. She accused Blumenthal and Democrats of hypocrisy, pointing to how the Biden administration allegedly protected Hunter Biden and discouraged investigations into his foreign business ties. This is where the exchange turned combative, both sides accusing the other of selective outrage. From a neutral standpoint, this is the classic mirror effect in U.S. politics. Each side accuses the other of weaponizing justice while defending its own actions as legitimate enforcement. The hearing then veered into corporate territory. Blumenthal pressed Bondi on a series of mergers, from Hewlett-Packard, Juniper to Skydance Paramount, suggesting her DOJ favored corporate allies and political donors. Bondi rejected the accusations, saying those cases were either still pending or not within DOJ's jurisdiction. When Blumenthal mentioned one of her former associates, lobbyist Brian Ballard, she snapped, accusing him of lying about his military service. That moment turned the exchange personal and ugly. It shifted attention away from substantive policy questions toward political theater. In the end, this hearing captured exactly what frustrates many Americans about Washington. Real issues like justice system integrity, corporate accountability, and political bias get lost in partisan crossfire. Both Blumenthal and Bondi raised valid points. Political interference in prosecutions is dangerous, no matter who's in power. But so is weaponizing hearings to score partisan points. If there's one takeaway, it's that trust in justice depends on transparency, restraint, and consistency values that shouldn't shift depending on who occupies the White House. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more balanced political analysis, no spin, just context.